Alright guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today we're going to be looking at 5 potential transfer destinations for Caleb Williams. If you don't know who he is, or you're just a casual fan, you don't know too much about him, he was the 7th ranked overall player in the class of 2021 of high-end 5-star recruit, true freshman. He was behind Spencer Rattler until they were down 28-7 in the Cotton Bowl against Texas. He came in, led them on an improbable comeback. They won 55-48, and they were down 28-7 when he came in. They scored 25 points in that fourth quarter, 35 total in the second half. He absolutely lit the world on fire. He had a pretty good season, I would say. 1,900 yards, 21 touchdowns, only 4 picks. And then, he was elusive as a runner. 6 more scores, 435 yards. This kid's the real deal. Of course, he had some freshman hiccups, though, sometimes the passing attack kind of struggled a bit. But regardless, Caleb Williams is the real deal. And he has announced he's potentially transferring from Oklahoma. He said that they are still going to be in the running for whatever decision he makes, but he looks like he's just going to explore his options a little bit. So today we're going to give out 5 options for where Williams might go. Looking at number 1, it's kind of the obvious choice, the USC Trojans. The glitz, the glamour, Los Angeles. It's a pretty highly desirable destination, especially for a budding superstar mixed with the NIL rules. LA is the perfect place for a guy like Williams. High-end talent, high-end superstar marketability. But what makes it even more appealing is that Lincoln Riley's now in town. Many have suspected since he left the Sooners, suddenly when he left Oklahoma, that the 2022 Heisman hopeful Williams would follow suit. He entered the portal here after the Alamo Bowl win over Oregon. I think entering the portal at least slightly implies that he isn't thrilled with Riley heading elsewhere. So I think that's important to take note of. Williams was a fast rising star, after taking over for Spencer Rattler in that Red River Showdown. He didn't look back. He led Oklahoma back to win against Texas in that crazy game. The rest of the year, he was a high-end producer for them. He really carried the team at times. Of course, he had those freshman hiccups. The passing attack sputtered. But, the explosive prowess, it was quite clear as a runner and a passer. He was incredibly young as well, so no one's going to hold him to it that he obviously can't improve. Some of those negatives that were on display late in 2021, no one's really too worried about him. The Washington, D.C. native, though, he appeared to be well on his way to being Riley's next masterpiece, and considering Caleb's dad stated pro-development as a big factor in where he ends up next, finishing what they started seems very plausible, and going to USC, so of course I think they're going to be the favorite, even though they do have a nice up-and-comer in Jackson Dart in their own right. Number 2 is Georgia. The Bulldogs can allegedly attach a $1 to $2 million deal, NIL deal that is, if he comes to Athens. That's just a rumor, though. I do think ending up with the Dogs, regardless of money or not, would be a near-perfect scenario for Williams. Georgia hasn't put a QB in the NFL, though, in a while, and the lone one who has that first-round talent under Kirby Smart's tenure is JT Daniels, and he isn't even playing. But, so I think development, that's obviously one of the drawbacks, but I do think the all-around culture and the surrounding talent is just a godly pairing for a player at the ceiling of Williams. Georgia, they've yet to get over that hump of beating Alabama and winning a national championship, although, again, they have an opportunity here in a couple of days to do so. They are unquestionably one of the elite programs in college football. They're going to remain that way for an extended period of time, regardless of what happens on Monday night. The Dogs, though, they've possessed a stellar defense for at least the last 3 seasons. You could argue they've had an elite defense for more than that, but over the last 3 seasons in particular, they've been great. The best in CFB. They aren't turning back anytime soon. I do think Williams, though, will certainly shine and compete for titles without having to put the team on its back. They're going to be able to play great defense, run the ball well, nice protection. The one drawback, though, I do think is ceiling in terms of development. It could be capped playing for Georgia with the system they run. And with the history of quarterbacks so far under Kirby Smart hasn't been great. So there is some drawbacks there, but competing for titles, obviously that's probably going to be your best destination is Georgia. Number 3 here, Penn State. They might seem like a long shot with them being 11-11 over the past 2 seasons. I can totally understand that, but at the same time, Williams was heavily interested in the Nittany Lions. Penn State made Williams Final 5. He took multiple trips to Happy Valley for campus visits, camps, whatever it may be. He was there quite often. Even with Penn State going through some slight turbulence over the past 2 years, this team has still managed to test the big dogs in the conference. 4 of their 5 losses this year in the Big Ten were ranked opponents. They lost all of them by 11 points or less, including Ohio State and Michigan. 4 of them were by 4 points or fewer, the Wolverines and Michigan State included. So they obviously can hang. They didn't get blown out in any games. Of course, they lost in like 9 overtimes to Illinois. But all their losses were close. They even beat a great Wisconsin team to kick off the season. And they've shown before they can hang with the heavyweights in this conference. The Nittany Lions, though, they did lose defensive coordinator Brent Pry. That could lead to the defense taking a bit of a step back, but I do think Franklin's a good coach. Should be able to keep the defensive strength of its football program, at least for the next couple of seasons. Williams could truly give Penn State that edge, though they need to get over the hump. And I think they could enter the national championship picture with him under center, working alongside Mike Yurcich as well. Could do wonders for his development, so that part is there. Again, his dad decided that's going to be a big reason why he ends up where he ends up. Mike Yurcich, I do think that'd be a good pairing there. The last good point, though, also, State College is probably the closest he can get to playing back near his hometown and still compete. Washington, D.C. is a little bit under 4 hours from Penn State. That's probably why he took so many visits there, because it's the closest to home. So Penn State, do not count them out in this race. I do think that they can make a big splash here. Number 4, Ole Miss. Another one that's kind of obvious. I think any QB that's on the open market will have to give Ole Miss a look and put them on their list. In my eyes, having the opportunity to play for Lane Kiffin is too good to ignore. That's why I think every quarterback will at least give them the time of day. Kiffin took an inconsistent / turnover prone Matt Corral, turned him into probably the top overall quarterback prospect in April. Him and Kenny Pickett, either of those two are probably going to be the top quarterback taken in the draft. So I think Kiffin, he's a perennial developer quarterbacks, especially ones that come with a high ceiling. And the Rebels defense, they did take a big step this season. They've shown that they can certainly compete in the SEC. They went to a New Year's Six bowl. They played Alabama tough 2 seasons ago. Regardless, this is a really good team. They beat Texas A&M, who's got loaded with talent. They're one of the heavy risers in the nation. So Ole Miss is certainly climbing the ladder. I think Williams, he might not be open to dealing with the pressure of playing for a Georgia or USC. And, Oxford's relatively laid back, especially with the groovy vibe, the personality that Kiffin brings to the table. He still can compete for a championship, at least in my eyes, being on this team. He can also be a standout performer. It seems like a really good pairing. This high-flying offense could somehow take that next step that, I don't think anyone really sees as possible, considering how tough they are to defend already. But overall, this could end up being the highest ceiling move out of all of them is Ole Miss. The last potential destination here, plain and simple, that's him staying with the Sooners. No one is truly shocked to see Williams enter the portal. But after landing Brent Venables and Jeff Lebby, I'm generally kind of surprised. I figured that he would want to stay with those guys because I think Oklahoma's probably in better hands with those two than they were with Lincoln Riley. I do think that Williams, acknowledging that Oklahoma's still going to be in consideration, is going to be big for them and to potentially recruit him back to stay with Oklahoma. He's likely just doing his due diligence here, since it's ideal timing to do so with his head coach unexpectedly leaving. While you can also transfer scotch-free pretty much with the new rules where you don't have to sit out a year. So he could be just doing his due diligence here, checking out his opportunities. I do think staying with the Sooners next to USC, it's the most feasible, most favorable destinations for the rising star. If he does leave Norman, though, the CFB world's certainly going to be shocked. But I think Oklahoma and USC are far and away the favorites. But I do think some of those rumors, if they are true about Georgia, then you might see him bolt for the SEC. And he'll be a Bulldog. So I think Oklahoma and USC are the favorites. Georgia's not far behind, but it should be one of those three. If not, then I don't really know, other than the other teams on this list. I think it'd be pretty crazy to see him not end up with one of those three, though, OU, USC, or UGA. I do think Auburn, Texas A&M, and Tennessee are potential long-shot destinations as well. But that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. Comment below where you think Caleb Williams will go. Do you think he'll stay at Oklahoma, or do you think he'll shock up the CFB world? Should be interesting to see how this plays out. Like, subscribe. See you guys next time.